I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. This is a regular meeting for the Assembly on Tuesday, January 7th, 2025. Madam Clerk.
Tim Haler, you on the phone?
Here.
Stephanie Nowers. Here. Dee McKee. Yep. Maxwell Sumner.
Here.
Bill Gamble.
Here.
Dimitri Ponoff.
Here.
And I do expect Ron Bernier. Madam Mayor, you do have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there anything any of the members would like to pull from the consent agenda? Okay, I guess not. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing and hearing none, then the agenda is approved. You all stand, and Assemblyperson Nowers, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And some of you may remember that I had mentioned to you that the mayors in the Mat-Su borough had a challenge regarding ringing the bell for Salvation Army. And I think I reported back to you that the borough did take first place, and so we are getting awarded a plaque tonight.
Perfect. Okay, there we go. Mayor Edna and the Assembly, we just want to thank you specifically and everybody that was involved in this, really your overall involvement in the Salvation Army Christmas campaign. We feel really just put a lot of motivation behind everything, from your special guest speaking at the Kettle Kickoff fundraiser luncheon to bringing out a team to ring bells. We really just did an amazing job this year raising money for the Salvation Army. We're excited. We have with us tonight Tim, our chairman of the board, and he's just going to share a couple numbers before we present you with the plaque.
Well, thanks so much, Assembly members and esteemed guests and community members. Some really good news here. The Salvation Army, of course, supports a number of our most vulnerable population out here in the Mat-Su. And through the efforts of this amazing community led by Mayor Edna DeVries, the Salvation Army was able to raise over $78,000 through Red Kettle Kickoff, which, to put it in perspective, is about 30,000 meals. And of course, I think that the Mat-Su borough is the best place to live, and we have the best community and the best borough mayor. I'd point out that Salvation Army in the Mat-Su raised more money than any other community in the state of Alaska. So with that, I'd like to thank all the community members and Mayor Edna DeVries.
I am in.
Thank you, Assemblymember Bernier.
I'm okay.
You're the first name in their 2024 winner. We look forward to next year.
He signed in, has he? Okay. So let the record show that Assemblyperson Deputy Mayor Bernier has signed in at 6:04. The next item on our agenda is the minutes of the preceding meeting for the 17th of December of 2024. Are there any changes to those meeting minutes? Seeing and hearing none, then the minutes have been approved as presented. The next item is agency reports. And I don't see anybody from any of the cities, but I do see somebody from the school district. Come on up. Happy New Year, lady.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Manager Brown, members of the Assembly. Thank you, as always, for the opportunity to provide a report. I had planned tonight to present that second semester had started and we're off to a great start. Unfortunately, our unique Alaska weather, I think, gave a slight reprieve to about 19,000 students who maybe weren't quite ready to come back to school yet. And unfortunately, we did have a school cancellation today. I am certainly hopeful that sanding is happening even as we speak, and we will be able to have buses on the road and school again tomorrow, but we will do our normal checks and communicate with the community if there is any disruption to service tomorrow. I will remind just the Assembly that we do have additional days above the state minimum that are built into the calendar. So the state requires that we have 170 days in session. And our current calendar has an additional 2 days for elementary students, an additional 5 days for secondary students. We also have another makeup day that's already calendared. So as the winter progresses and we get final counts of any closures or remote learning days that are occurring, we will be meeting with the school board probably in February to look at any modifications to the calendar that have to occur to be within those state minimums. But we know, based on having lived here for a long time, that the weather's unpredictable, and unfortunately there are times when we have to have cancellations, and why we build in a little bit of a buffer into the calendar to the extent that we can. I also want to just say a few thank yous to the borough. First, like the Assembly, we did have time with the legislative delegation back in December, had a very positive and productive meeting. Thank you to the mayor and to the manager for helping us to coordinate that. It's nice to not have to call that delegation back for a second meeting. So I appreciate the flexibility to let us tag on to the end of that. And hopefully we'll be able to coordinate for years into the future and just be part of the regular meeting. So we appreciate the flexibility there. Also, as we're talking about roads, we've started a conversation with Mr. Adams and his team to really make sure that we're coordinating and sharing information when we do have inclement weather and we have maintenance issues and or needs that come up, to make sure that we're able to share information and the resources that we have, and the borough is able to accommodate when we have certain areas that maybe require some additional attention to get buses back on the road. That's been a great partnership. I'm happy to see that we've moving that conversation forward. I also will just mention that we also were able to participate along with the mayor at the first task force meeting regarding the semi-quincentennial, which doesn't quite roll off the tongue, but I'm working on it. And so the school district's excited about the celebration that is to come, and making sure that we have opportunities for students to be involved, participate, and potentially have access to some of the events that are planned as part of that big nationwide event. A couple of reminders that are upcoming is we do have a regular school board meeting, the only meeting in January, which will be January 15th. After that meeting, we will start our process of collecting public input on the budget process. We'll have information that should be available the very next day. I'll make sure to share any links or information with the manager so that he can share those out with the Assembly if individuals have information or questions regarding that. So I appreciate the time. I know I don't often say that I'm available for questions, but if you ever have them, please let me know. That's part of why I'm here. Thank you again, and Happy New Year to you as well.
Happy New Year. Any question? Okay. Thank you very much for being here tonight. I knew the one question would be, is there school tomorrow? So I'm glad you had the foresight to address that in your remark. Normally, the next person we have is a report from the state of Alaska. Todd told us today at Wasilla Chamber he would not be available. I believe actually he is doing his duty on the Willow Fire Service area meeting tonight. So we miss having him. And he did say today that he is not one of the participants in the Dubai visitation that's going to go on with the governor. He said he didn't, but he is going to go and attend the inauguration in Washington, D.C. It's my understanding there was no joint assembly school board meeting, so we do not have any meeting minutes or report from there. Are there any public relations reports that anybody would like to state? I would like to call your attention to that on January 20th, it will be the celebration of Martin Luther King Day, and there will be a event at the Glen Massey from 1 until 4. Everybody is invited. I will do a proclamation, as I have in the preceding years, for that event. And it'll be at the Glen Massey. Okay. Any other public relations report? No? Okay, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to invite Jason Ortiz up. He's our Deputy Director for Planning and Land Use. So I asked Jason and his team to provide an update on transit. We've been having that conversation in small, bite-sized chunks. We are approaching the budget season and where we'll have to have conversations about that non-federal match. So I'll turn it over to him, and it's just meant to be an informational update for you tonight about what we're doing and where we're going. So that you can be informed of that, because we're probably going to do some things here in the near future that might generate some discussions and questions. With that said, I'll turn over to Mr. Ortiz.
All right. Good evening, Assembly members, Madam Mayor, Mr. Manager, Jason Ortiz, Deputy Director of Planning. Tonight, we're going to talk about just a little, like Manager Brown said, a little bit about the update on transit. Can you guys hear me good? First, I'd like to introduce some of the team members who have been helping me. I have Rebecca Scouthog. Sorry, her last name. I always have to write it phonetically here. And Rebecca is a planning specialist in the planning department. She's pretty new to our team. Camden Yaley, she's with the Camden Yaley and Associates. She was already working as a contractor, and we've been working together. And also Bianca Zybrat. She might be online. I know she was affected by the roads. With that, we're going to, is the right button?
I can't see without my glasses working. Pointed this way. It's the one that to the right.
It's the worn out button.
Oh, worn out button. Okay.
Perfect way to say it. Thank you.
So this slide does give you a little bit of history on here. Essentially, I'm not going to read everything here, but essentially how we got here today is from the 2020 census. The Matsu Borough was designated to have, it was changed for this urbanized area. The way the funding used to come into these for transit, it used to go directly to a nonprofit. So Valley Transit was that one that was receiving the funding. You'll hear terminology of 5307, 5311. They're just a matter of rural and urban and rural funding, excuse me. They used to be a direct recipient, so they would get that money directly. Now that we have hit a certain threshold of population, the borough now has we have to receive the money. If we want to continue transit, we have to receive the money, and it can no longer pass through a nonprofit. So as you can see, the last two bullet points there on August 8th, the assembly, most of you guys here, you guys unanimously approved that we would be the recipient of that direct funding. And then on November 6th, the governor signed off on that to allow that process to take place. So where we're at now is we are in a situation where we can receive the funding. The max funding that we can receive from the feds is 1.8 million, which means that if we did that, the borough would be putting in that equal amount. Presently, there's two different types of service, transit service. There's a fixed route service, and then there's a demand response service. The fixed route is what you guys would traditionally see on those buses, the large buses, Valley Transit, that go to Anchorage. They run 14 different routes, so they're running just on a fixed route, stopping at the Trunk and the Seward Meridian Parkway. They have and a couple spots out in Big Lake. So, and then the on-demand or demand response services where people call in and say, I need to go from my house to Big Lake or from Big Lake to the Butte, and they cross through different zones. They get charged a certain amount. So those are the two models of service. In looking through this, I think I've been about 7 weeks dive into transit now. The one thing I have to remind myself is this is not looked at as like a business model. Transit does not operate like a business model anywhere in the United States. It's a subsidized service, and that's how it's looked at from every perspective. One thing I just also wanted to talk about too is the transit is something that is part of our long-range transportation project, the OSHIP, Bike and Plan, TIP, STIP. It all aligns with all these previously adopted plans. Again, on this slide, that July 1st, that's our date that we need to have service, our service ready, whatever we're going to choose. So what we did here, based upon, we were trying to figure out what we can do with the information that we had. 2023 numbers, we knew the 2023 numbers. We did not know the 2024 numbers. We reached out to Valley Transit. They said they had the first quarter numbers available, and all of 2024 numbers will be available at the end of January, so January 2025. So what we did is on the next slides that I'm going to go over, we just made a projected model based upon the first quarter of 2024. And also after speaking with Valley Transit, they do anticipate their numbers looking larger than 2023. So we just did a projected model with that. And so I'm going to go ahead and and kind of show you what this looks like. So we created just an option A, an option B, an option C, and a D. One thing I want to remind all the assembly is these are not like set in stone. These are just something to give you guys to visually see what this does in 4 different options. And the way we did it is a very simple approach. So when you're looking at that first slide that's up there, option A, this is the existing funding. This is where we're at today, present day. If you guys chose this model, you would be looking at a $1.5 million investment with $1.5 million of federal funding coming from the feds. This is what the breakdown of that looks like. You can see 6 large buses on that fixed route, and then the 6 mini buses, 3 vans on the demand response model. The mill rate affected in that option A. On the last slide, I'm going to show you what all these do in response or in relation to the mill rate. Option B, exactly that, you can see it right there. This is bringing it down $250,000 increment, and how that would affect it. I'm just going to run through this, option C, and you'll see as we get to option D, the mill rate, and then how it's affected and what that looks like as far as a reduction of services on there. So this run right here is basically is exactly what it shows. It says option A, option B, option C, and D. And then what that looks like to the mill rate per $100,000 assessed taxes. We did prepare a what's next type of slide. So this kind of tells you where we're at in this process. Right now, we're about to publish an RFI. This is going to be a request for interest. The idea of this request for interest is we're going to put it out there, and it's a little different than an RFP where we're looking for soliciting for a bid. The RFI process is basically what companies are out there have potential interest in bidding. We'd like to have those companies then submit just their information. Hey, we're interested in potentially bidding. Then take those companies as we are simultaneously drafting RFPs. We'd like to invite those individuals to the table and say, take a look at our RFPs and have some dialogue, so that way we could put some solid information. We're working on really short timelines, and so the idea was to try to get this as solid as we can without addendums or going back and forth, and having a solid RFP. So you can see January, we're about to publish this RFI. February, we're going to put out an RFP. This is a really interesting way we're going to do it. We're going to do 2 separate RFPs. One RFP is going to be for demand response, and one's going to be for the fixed transit. And then we're going to try to incorporate into those RFPs, what kind of value can you bring to the borough if you are going to bid on both? If you have the opportunity to win both, what kind of value can you bring to the borough? So see if the borough can get the most bang for their buck. And then taking us into March, manager's report, then April's going to come along. It's going to come before you all. And public will have the opportunity to comment as well. And then hopefully we'll be right into awarding contracts and then trying to implement our service. Some of the things I also wanted to just talk about in the potential RFP, and we're waiting for some information to come back from feds and from the state, but we feel fairly confident that whoever wins the bid for the fixed route will also have access to the existing buses that are being used. Those buses are presently, the lien holder is the state of Alaska. And we do have word that they do want to transfer that to us, like transfer those liens to us. So that is a big deal for whoever potentially wins the contract. As far as what we've looked at just on an initial purview of this, we feel pretty confident. We have Rebecca and Bianca, a couple of the planners. They've done some just quick analysis of what we are currently doing, and we feel that we can be more efficient. We would recommend option B. It's a little more conservative. It's not existing to doing exactly what we're doing, but what it does, it will give us the opportunity to take a set of data and see how it's been affected from previous years to now. It's not too drastic, but it also provides continuity because we do know in looking at the models, when you start ramping it down a lot, it really affects transit. There's a certain breaking point where if you just start removing routes, on the fixed route, it doesn't provide that reliability. So I can give you guys a good example. Like when I used to work for United States Federal Judiciary, I would commute into town on these buses, right? It would drop me off right at the museum, and I'd walk 300 feet. But I knew in the end of the day, I can get on a bus at a certain time. What it does is if you start capping those end routes down, because you might say, oh, there's not enough seats being filled. What that ends up doing is that people will just say, I'm not going to ride the bus anymore. It's easier for me to do this, or there's other options, So you really have to, there is a certain tipping point where it will kind of crumble the system. There's also opportunities diving into this, into the federal monies that are available. There is opportunities for the borough to hire a professional to take on this and do this. So we do have to decide, or you guys have to decide if what you want to provide, what level of service you want to provide. And if it is like, say, option B, there's also something we should look at is hiring a professional. There's transit professionals that are well known, and that the really great thing is we can actually get a 90-10 split with hiring those professionals. So 90% being covered by the feds, 10% by the borough. And that will cover planning professionals. It can cover like a whole vast array of different services that we can look into. So I think with that is, I believe, all I have on my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Assemblyperson Nowers, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I just, I do like the idea of tapping those 90% federal funds for planning. And I like the option B. I just wonder if in the RFIs, if there will be some flexibility, like on the fixed route, as somebody who's ridden that before, like you mentioned, if you start cutting service, people just drop the service altogether. So I see you're dropping one bus under the option B. So like flexibility for the whoever's proposing it to say, hey, it really won't work, like that's going to cut us below. We're going to lose more people than it's worth to have the service. So that's just a thought. And then just one question, the income that does come in from the buses, where is that? Is that reflected in these budgets as well? So if we pay 1.25 million and we take in 100,000 in fares or something, does that go to the borough? That makes sense.
Go ahead, John.
Through the mayor to Assemblymember Nowers, I couldn't answer that for certain. I believe just in reviewing the 990s from the existing operator, it appears that they were previously getting like 90% funding from the feds, like 8.5 or so, or 9% from the Matthew Health Foundation. I believe that additional 1% or whatever, 1.5, was the fares taken in. When we did the calculations, it was based on ridership and the numbers of just that. So these numbers don't mean they're 100% accurate. We're just doing a projected model because we didn't have the exact numbers. So we assume it's going to be somewhere in there. It's going to be really close in there, but yeah, we're just going on a projected model at this moment.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Further questions? Yes, Assemblyperson Gamble, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Jason. I know you just kind of adopted this whole program here recently, and you're just getting your toe into the water. I just want to confirm that the maintenance costs for these vehicles are included in the operating costs?
Yes, they were included. That's all included in this. So.
Okay, so my second question is, what would be the advantage of the borough taking over the liens on these buses instead of leaving them with the state?
I don't know, through the mayor to Assemblymember Gamble. I'm not sure that I know the answer to that, and probably we need to dive deeper into that. I would refer that maybe to the manager, or we have to have a discussion with the attorneys to see where that goes. It's just information we just received.
Okay, so if we did, I assume that we would be taking over the maintenance, not just the operation.
I think that would be rolled into the RFP. I
Okay,
believe it would
gotcha.
be rolled into the RFP. So whoever takes that on, that's how we would draft the RFP. And we're trying to think of everything when we write these RFPs, right? And so the idea was to do this RFI, try to simultaneously be drafting this, bring them to the table, let everyone maybe potentially get a preview, take feedback, change things up how we need to change it up so that we can get the best group of bidders to be able to bid on this opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Assemblyperson Sumner, did you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry.
Camden was just saying she doesn't think there's any disadvantage to the borough taking over the lien, but yeah, it's probably something we still need to explore.
Sumner.
Yeah, so if I understood you correctly, this budget, the 1.5 million FTA funding, 1.5, like for instance, option A, 1.5 million FTA funding, 1.5 million borough funding, that doesn't include the fares, correct? Like the fares are,
It did actually include the fares in there. We're just estimating what we think it is, all that in there. So it does.
okay, so my question is, it costs, under option A, it costs 3 million to operate in a year, or it costs 3 million plus whatever the fares are?
Yeah, through the mayor to Assemblymember Sumner, it is extremely minimal, like the fares.
What are the fares?
To ride to the.
Yeah.
Can we have
We
you
have
come to
people
the
on the
mic?
phone, so
Abby,
we
come
need
on
you
up.
to come speak at the mic. Thank you.
State your name.
Then please state your name and then go ahead and speak. Thank you.
I'm Becca Scotthog. For the fare rates, it's $10 round trip to Anchorage, $7 one way. I believe it's $120 for a month pass. Students ride for free. There are a couple different companies that also pay for their employees to ride for free. I know ConocoPhillips is one of them. And then the way the demand response system works is it's broken down into 9 different zones. So each zone that you ride through increases your cost. So per zone is $3. So if you go from zone 1 to zone 4, total fare cost is going to be $12. But this does differentiate if you're going into youth and seniors. So seniors are going to be $2, same with youth. Those prices are a little bit different for them. The fares, generally speaking, in any transit provider throughout the U.S. is very, very minimal. You're looking like 1 to 3% of the total operations costs are going to come from the fares. It is 100% pretty much subsidized, whether that's locally or FTA funding.
Okay, so So I guess, this is just the portion that's being subsidized, essentially, then the rest of the fares are an inconsequential amount, right? So just bear with me. So is my math correct that we're looking at, for instance, 1.5 on option A, $1.59 million per year to operate the fixed routes and 32,860 rides? That's individual unique rides. So that's $48.38 per ride per person? Okay.
And through the mayor to Assemblymember Sumner, like, we're doing all these same things. We're 6 weeks into this, so we're kind of doing all these same things and trying to explore every single option, like the share ride vans and service providers like Lyft and Uber. Some of the problems that we're seeing the FTA has specific funding mechanisms for is they have to be ADA accessible. So the majority of the fixed route stuff, or like when you get a Lyft or an Uber or you call Valley Cab, they are not ADA accessible. And some of those are the big problems that we're running into, because we're like, how can we try to be creative on different ways to get this money and funding and just be a little bit more conservative on it. But again, in just figuring out some of the routes that we've looked at, we've already established ways that we could be more efficient, like on this. And that's why we're recommending B, because I think it's a little bit more conservative. It's not the exact same funding level, but I think it would provide some good data that we would be able to see after a year on there. But again, all of these options, they were just models. We wanted to provide you guys with some simple slides to be able to just look and see, and then an actual in slide so you can see how that affects the mill. You guys are welcome to move that around however you like. It was just a starting point for discussion.
Further questions? Yes, Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
Yeah, this might have already been answered at some other point, but how far out do we actually go? I mean, how far, how far out is the farthest fixed route? And how far out if I'm just doing what'd you call that thing about
The demand
yeah,
response.
how far, like if I'm sitting in, I don't know, Cantwell, how far does this thing go? I mean, no.
Continue to sit in Cantwell, McDean, they're not coming.
I'm trying to get an idea of how far out it does go, because I don't know.
Through the mayor to Assemblymember McKee. Fixed routes, is it Big Lake? Talk about the specific routes.
Sure. This is Camden Yaley and Associates, brought on as research muscle, I guess, to help the planning department. The fixed route only goes to Meadow Lakes, just down the street from me, and then to Anchorage. That's the range on fixed route, the big buses. The demand response, the smaller buses and the SUVs go from, they have 9 zones, I want to say, that go to Big Lake, out to Palmer area. Yeah, including Butte. Does that help? There are 2 other service providers, Sunshine Transit, which goes further that direction, and then there is Chickaloon Tribal Transit that goes the other direction. Yeah. The focus of this is this urbanized area, but of course it's not contained inside the urbanized area. It's greater urbanized area, and then there are these 2 other providers that connect in as well.
And second question, do you have any idea of the amount of interest that there is? Like, are you gonna be deluged with people bidding on this thing, or just? And are they mostly local? I mean, I don't think somebody's going to come into, like LA and set up a transit. Is it mostly local?
We have no idea of the interest. I mean, we are going to put it out there, and I mean, I did have the school district's company that does them. They did reach out to me to ask about this, and so we did tell them we're going to do an RFI. I don't know if that means they're interested. They just reached out, but it will definitely be interesting to see what we get. We're hoping we get a good group of people that express interest in it.
Thanks.
Further question? Yes, Assemblyperson Fauna, go ahead.
The other 1.5 million, that's, you said, coming from Fed, is that through the MPO system, the money that we're getting? Or is this a different fund? Maybe Manager Brown can help us. I want to know if that other one is already established, or that's something that is also going through certain challenges to get the other match, I guess, from federal side.
So through the mayor to Assemblymember Fanoff, that is additional monies that we would receive. So we would actually do a grant request for whatever we're gonna match. So once the assembly says we're gonna put in X amount of dollars, then we put in a grant request so that we can get X amount of dollars from the feds, from the FTA.
And that is a common practice that is guaranteed to get if that's
Yeah.
what you're matching?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that there's.
This isn't every year. We're going to be doing this every single year, going through and determining what we want to invest and how we want to look. So that's why when we're giving you a project, this is just our guess. Like, we've looked at stuff and we said we think it can operate a little bit more efficiently, and it'd be good to see what just a slight reduction does from what we've currently provided, because then we'd have some stats to say, option B versus option A, and this is what we've either it's done well, or we need to increase it back, and we revisit that every budget cycle.
I guess I'm still trying to understand. And when MPO got implemented, and they were in the process of getting through because we reached certain population area, and there was a lot of promises that we're going to get a lot of funding, and one of them was towards the public transit. And it seems like now we have to step out big chunk of that. So that's why I wanted to know if, but I guess that has nothing to do with the MPO money that federal was wanted part of their grant of us being that MPO.
Through the mayor, I like to think of it this way. So when the census was completed and released, other federal agencies use the census information for triggering different grants, and they use it all differently. So FTA, which is the Federal Transit Administration, leverages that urban area designation to change the match formula for urbanized transit funding. We still will be, as a community, receiving rural transit funding as well. And that's those other providers like Sunshine, for example. So they'll still operate at a 90-10, 90% federal, 10% local. But in the urbanized area, because of that designation, the FTA then says, no, your match goes from 90-10 to 50-50. Now the MPO, which is under federal highways or USDOT, it's the same larger agency, use that urbanized designation, and that's what established the MPO. The MPO has planning dollars, but it will also bring to us through the STIP transportation dollars to actually complete projects. That's still happening as well, but that's separate from what we're doing here. As it's set up, as Jason explained, we're going to be the direct recipient for FTA funds. And so as that money comes in, we talked about this with the cities, because I thought, well, wait a minute, there's these cities out here in this urban area. How are they going to participate in this? And what we realized was, if we do this under an area-wide umbrella, it's covering the cities. Area-wide encompasses the cities. And so instead of making it a more complicated discussion involving two city councils on top of the borough assembly, we thought, and the cities were happy, by the way, to hand this off to us to figure out. And then what we have to kind of do is figure out, how do we then step into this and administer a program, right? Because we've allowed that to occur really outside the borough. In the past, we would receive the funding and it would just pass through, and I'm not even sure we received it, but it'd go to these rural providers, and they executed it without any borough oversight, right? And so now we're realizing, well, we have to step into this. Most municipalities, from what I understand, own the buses and run the service. If you look to the south, that's exactly how they run their service in Anchorage. We've taken a slightly different approach and said we want to look at this from how we might contract this service out, so that the operations, the maintenance of the vehicles, who's driving them, how they provide service, like we would oversee the program and provide the match funding, but it would be executed through a contracted service. And then we realized with these buses, because the Federal Transit Administration bought through state DOT these 6 motor coaches that are relatively new and gave them to Valley Transit and put a lien against them. And so what we're saying is if those 6 coaches are available, we can leverage that essentially as like government furnished equipment and let a contractor use that. And that would reduce the capital outlay to buy buses that meet the requirements and are ADA accessible. And so that's why we're looking for the fixed route. That doesn't exist for this demand response for these smaller buses and the vans. And so a company will have to evaluate that and figure out how to make that work. And so I've mentioned this before, we don't have all the answers because we haven't been administering this program. Therefore, we don't have the data, we don't have the financial records, and there's a lot of things that we don't know or understand. I think when we step into this, we're going to try to find a model that we think is reasonable. We're going to collect data, we're going to learn, and we're going to make adjustments. And I think that's what the next fiscal year is going to look like. So like Jason said, or alluded to, we want to provide some continuity, but admittedly, we want to put a little pressure on the system and see if we can change things up a little bit to see if there are some efficiencies to be gained. But there's a lot we don't know. So I think what he's done here and what his team's done is put together some scenarios that kind of give you a sense for what does this money buy you in terms of ridership? How is it apportioned between demand response and fixed route? So that we can kind of give you some context. Jason said they're recommending option B. I have not made a recommendation yet because I want to see what the RFPs yield before I have to make a decision. The reason we're on this timeline is because in the March timeframe, our finance director is going to demand I provide her a number for what needs to go into the manager's proposed budget. And what I'm saying is I'm not comfortable with any of these numbers right now. So I'm hoping through the RFP and some additional dialogue with those that might be interested providers that we're going to learn some things, figure out how do we adjust the service potentially and what number we're comfortable putting into the proposed budget. So you'll see that number coming up in the March-April timeframe. And then we'll have some public hearings and talk about it a little bit more. What we wanted to do today, because once Jason sends these RFIs out, once we start putting RFPs on the street, I do expect there will be some people that are interested in what we're doing and how we're doing it, and some people might not like it. And so we just wanted to give you a heads up why we're doing what we're doing, where we are in the process, and what's next. So if you get phone calls and you hear people discussing this in the community, you're not blindsided. Are we good?
Assemblyperson Sumner, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Jason, I was wondering if you had any information on how many full-time employees Valley Transit had.
29. Through the mayor to Assemblymember Sumner. Yes, 29.
Thank you.
Further questions, comments? Well, this is just the first round of how many rounds are we? 15 or something like that. It's like a boxing match or something. So anyway, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, do you have any further
I have
report?
one very quick update. I mentioned at the last regular assembly meeting, I'd provide you an update on the Academy Charter procurement. There was a discussion around design build versus design bid build. We are proceeding with a design build. And so I followed up just to want to inform you of that. And that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Okay, all righty. Mr. Attorney, do you have a report, sir? No comments, okay. Madam Clerk, report.
Clerk's report with the quasi judicial report is in your red folders. The last meeting the assembly did schedule all the budget meetings. What we neglected to schedule was the departmental budget presentation meetings. Administration is recommending April 10th, which is a Thursday at 10 a.m.
Anybody have any concerns or questions? Okay. I know that's quite a ways out. I see people looking to see if they're, anybody have a problem with April 10th? So that's a daytime meeting. It'll be at 10 o'clock in the morning. So, okay.
I have a conflict. I have a previously scheduled meeting from 11 to 1 that day. So if there's a way to not do it on the 10th, I'm free on the 11th.
Okay.
Or on the 9th.
I would defer to Mr. Brown on whether it'd be the 9th or the 11th. Is there a recommendation?
I would leave that to the assembly. I think we can accommodate either day if there's a preference there. We can make some adjustments, but I think we can make either day work.
What's the assembly's wishes?
I would prefer the 9th, Wednesday, the 9th.
The 9th,
Yes, Madam Mayor.
okay. Does anybody have any problem on the 9th? Okay, already? So, and Mr. Brown, that's acceptable to staff? Okay. And Madam Clerk?
That was
further?
it.
Okay. Righty, the next item on our agenda are citizens and other correspondence. Are there any comments regarding the citizens and correspondence? Okay, hearing none, and they are presented. Let the record show that Assemblyperson Deputy Mayor appeared in person at 6:26 p.m. Okay. Madam Clerk.
IM 25008, reporting conclusion of contract number 24084B with Neeser Construction for a total contract amount of $200,692.25 for Sunshine Creek Circle improvements. IM 259, reporting conclusion of contract number 2431B with Scarcella Brothers for a total contract amount of $2,621,012.91 for Central Landfill Grading Project. IM 2512, reporting the conclusion of contract 23092B with Mass Excavation for a total contract amount of $1,197,925.03 for Valley View Drive, Spinnaker Drive, Admiralty Circle, and Neptune Circle upgrade project. I am 2514, reporting conclusion of contract 258B with Western Construction and Equipment for a total contract amount of $615,721.16 for Tate Drive resurfacing project. I am 2515, informing the Assembly of a time extension only grant amendments for the road bond package, the rail extension to Port McKenzie, and the Gateway Visitor Center Phase 2 to be presented to the manager for signature. And I am 2519, informing the Assembly of the manager's signature on and submittal of a Rasmussen Community Grant requesting $250,000 to fund upgrades to the Matanuska River Park.
Are there any comments on the IMs? Okay, hearing and hearing none, they are presented. We are under special orders, and we do have a sign-up sheet, okay? So we're going to go ahead and open audience participation, and Colton, I guess it is, I'm sorry.
Colton, can I get you to press that button to turn the mic on? Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here tonight to speak on ordinance 24-101 that's getting introduced tonight, I believe. It's sponsored by Tim Hale. Good evening, members of the Assembly. I'm a 29-year resident of the Mat-Su Borough and have worked as a local real estate professional for the last 10 years. I own multiple properties in the borough, including raw land and multifamily housing. 10 years ago, I took an oath when I became a realtor. Part of that oath is to protect the individual right of real estate ownership and to widen the opportunity to enjoy it. I am here for that purpose today. I have friends, family, and clientele that own anywhere from one rental unit to over 2,000 rental units. I feel I am uniquely qualified to speak on this matter as I have a deeper understanding of multifamily housing than most. First, I strongly oppose with the proposed ordinance and appreciate the intent in which it is written, but as my grandmother used to say, it is a short road to a hot place paved with good intentions. Nationwide, statewide, and borough-wide, we have a housing shortage. Furthermore, we have an even bigger affordable housing shortage. What is multifamily housing? At its core, it is affordable housing. Unfortunately, from an ownership standpoint, it is becoming less affordable by the day. When ownership becomes less affordable, by default, rent becomes less affordable. When rent becomes less affordable, it keeps a young adult from moving out and gaining their independence. It keeps a homeless person from being able to get off the street. It keeps a struggling single mother from her ability to survive and provide a home for her kids. This ordinance will make affordable housing less affordable. It will create drag on the construction process, and in some cases, due to public comment, it will keep projects from happening entirely. All of this equates to less housing. The laws of supply and demand dictate that less housing, by default, makes housing more expensive. The trickle-down effect will lead to an increase in socioeconomic issues, more homelessness, more theft, and more rampant drug addiction, issues our community is already struggling to overcome. There is already enough restriction on where and how housing can be built. Most subdivisions have conditions, covenants, and restrictions that don't allow for multifamily housing. Nearly all bank financing of these construction projects requires them to be inspected and built to international residential code. Adding government bureaucracy and public comment into the mix will add unnecessary time, money, and headache for new projects. We want to make it easier, not harder, for landlords, builders, and developers to provide affordable housing to our community. It is cut and dry that the benefits of affordable housing greatly outweigh the cons. A vote for this ordinance is a vote against affordable housing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Caitlin?
Hi. All right. Good evening, Assembly members. My name is Caitlin Espada, and I have been a realtor in the Mat-Su Valley for the past 12 years. I currently serve as the president of the Valley Board of Realtors, and I am here tonight representing our organization. The Valley Board of Realtors consists of 344 members that were involved in facilitating over 3,500 sales in 2024. I am speaking tonight in opposition to Ordinance 24-101, which proposes further regulation of multifamily construction. Our community is already facing significant challenges in providing affordable housing for both homeowners and renters, and this ordinance risks exacerbating the problem. I urge the Assembly to consider the following points. Rising construction costs. The cost of building multifamily housing is already prohibitively high. For example, a new construction fourplex that cost approximately $650,000 in 2018 now costs closer to $950,000. Additional regulations would only increase these costs, making multifamily construction even less viable for developers. Escalating rents. Rents have risen dramatically over the past 6 years. In 2018, a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit with a 1-car garage rented for $950 per month. Today, tenants must pay a minimum of $1,400 for the same unit. Despite these increases, demand remains high, with property owners receiving multiple applications for each unit. This creates a significant barrier for renters, particularly low-income individuals and seniors who often face challenges such as paying multiple application fees or even experiencing periods of homelessness while waiting for housing. These pressures force many of our most vulnerable residents to make impossible choices, such as between buying groceries or even paying rent. We believe that the existing codes, local zoning laws, and subdivision CCRs provide sufficient oversight for multifamily housing construction in the Mat-Su Valley. Adding more regulatory layers risks not only worsening the housing shortage, but also driving construction costs higher, further limiting access to affordable housing. We ask the Assembly to carefully weigh these unintended consequences before moving forward with Ordinance 24-101. Let's work together to ensure that our community remains a place where all residents can find safe and affordable housing. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. I'd just like to point out that we are introducing that ordinance tonight, and then on the 21st of January will be a public hearing, and you're welcome to come at that time and testify again under audience participation or under the public hearing portion of that meeting. So just wanted you to know that. Okay, Travis.
Well, my name is Travis Friesen. I live in Palmer. I have some ideas for sidewalks, such as I would like to see a sidewalk around inner and outer Springer, because I've seen people walk on the side of the road, and when it gets dark, people can't see them, can't see the people, so that puts them in danger. So I would like to, it'd be good, because since that road has a high speed limit than residential roads, so I think it would be good. And also tied to that, to the sidewalks, is that I would also like to see a bike path connect to the. I would like to see a bike path along the hay flats that will connect to the existing bike paths to Anchorage. So that way, if I want to ride my bike from Eagle River, I could just go on the bike path and ride over there. So, those are some ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Is there anyone else that would like to address the assembly on anything that's on the agenda, or just anything you would like to speak to the assembly about? Anybody? We have one person online. Okay, go ahead. The person online, please.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Assembly. My name is Kathy Kaiser, K-Y-S-A-R. The icy roads in Sutton kept me from driving in tonight, but I feel like this matter needs to be addressed urgently. In November, Jackie Goforth submitted 10 book challenges to the borough, 5 of which were for adult books. Did you hear that? She is now challenging adult books. It's interesting to note that not only is Ms. Goforth a published author of erotica herself, she is also the only person to submit book challenges to our borough over the past 18 months or so. So basically, since this whole mess started, the Mat-Su Borough has bowed to this one woman's whims for far too long. The borough has paid administration to deal with these book challenges by providing her an audience with every librarian nearly monthly, paying staff to attend after-hours meetings, take minutes, file paperwork, and maintain a new website just to deal with her challenges. What has the borough gained from all this? Well, she lied when she said she wasn't asking for the books to be banned, when in fact she stated that she wanted books destroyed. She stated this in her own writing on made-up book challenge forms that she submitted to the borough. Thankfully, those were redacted by the borough, but the fact remains that she did make the request for them to be destroyed. Now she's moved on to challenging adult books in our libraries, requesting that they be removed because of explicit sex. Did I mention that she is an author of erotica herself? I recently read one of her books available at the library, and it was about a 49-year-old American man who time travels to 1803 Scotland and hooks up with a teenage girl. The title of the book is Penetrate. Talk about explicit. Based on her standards, her own books should be banned. If I weren't such a proponent of intellectual freedom, I'd submit challenges to remove her books from our libraries myself. But then, I'm not a hypocrite. An author myself, and as a card-carrying member of Authors Against Book Bans, I'm pleading with you. How far are you going to let this go? How many dollars are you going to let this lying hypocrite pilfer from borough coffers? Why not just stop this right now? Accept no more book challenges. Shut this down. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that the only person we have online? Okay, one last chance for anyone here that would like to address the assembly. Okay, I'll go ahead and close audience participation, and Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 24-109, an ordinance creating West Raven Circle Natural Gas Local Improvement District, number LID 669, approving the improvement plan for the district, authorizing the manager to proceed with the improvement, and assessing equally among the properties within the district the cost of the improvement. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Staff, go ahead.
Through the mayor to the assembly, Cheyenne Heindel, finance director. Before you is creation legislation for LID 669, which is the natural gas LID. Balloting on this occurred. There were 3 lots in this LID, 2 returned with the yes vote and 1 with a no vote. We are asking at this time you approve this LID.
Questions of the staff? Okay, all right, thank you. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 24-109. We do not have a sign-up sheet. Okay. Anyone here that would like to address the assembly on this ordinance? Do we have anybody online, sir? We do not. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And Assemblyperson Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to adopt ordinance 24-109.
Okay, is there a discussion? Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 25001, an ordinance amending MSB 3.15200 Board of Equalization appeal related to setting of dates for tax assessment appeals before the Borough Board of Equalization. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Okay, do we have a staff report?
I've got Assembly Member John Aschenbrenner.
Oh, attorney, Mr. Attorney, go ahead.
John Aschenbrenner, Deputy Borough Attorney, through the Mayor to the Assembly. So the Assembly sets the dates of the Board of Equalization under its authority by Alaska Statute 2945-240. And we have in our code sort of a talismanic requirement that the clerk set the dates of the board on or about April 20th. The reality is you set those by resolution. So this is just, I would call it cleanup to mirror what's happening in reality, is that you set the dates of the Board of Equalization, and taking away this specific date to mirror what the clerk has to do, which is follow your decision by your resolution. Does that make sense? I hope.
Anybody have any questions? No? Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 25-001. Anyone that would like to address this ordinance? Do we have anybody online? No? Okay. Anybody, last chance? Okay. Go ahead and close the public hearing on ordinance 25-001. And
I move to adopt ordinance 25-001.
Okay, discussion by the Assembly? Any objection by the Assembly? Hearing none, then the legislation passes. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 25002, an ordinance accepting and appropriating a grant in the amount of $15,000 from the Alaska State Department of Military and Veterans Affairs 2023 State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program, and approve the scope of work and budget for modernizing critical telecommunications cybersecurity infrastructure with accompanying resolution 25-1, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget for a grant in the amount of $15,000 from the Alaska State Department of Military and Veterans Affairs 2023 State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Staff, thank you.
Through the mayor to the Assembly, Cheyenne Heinel, Finance Director. Before you is it accept and appropriate of $15,000 for cybersecurity. Specifically, this will further protect our citizens by ensuring the upgrading and modernization of our cyber system.
Questions of staff? Okay, ready, thank you. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 25-002 and resolution 25-001. Do not have a sign-up sheet. Okay, anyone that would like to testify? Do we have anybody? We do not have anybody online. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And
I move to adopt ordinance 25-002 and resolution 25-001.
discussion by the Assembly? Any objection? Hearing none, then the legislation passes. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 25003, an ordinance converting the Port McKenzie Building Maintenance Specialist position from an on-call position to a full-time position and allowing for the hiring of this position prior to the beginning of fiscal year 2026. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press star 3.
Staff, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, members of the Assembly. My name is David Griffin. I'm the Port Operations Manager for Port McKenzie. This ordinance, pretty self-explanatory. What we're looking to do is convert an existing part-time position to full-time. This position is the building maintenance specialist for the port. They check the gates, they take care of the building, do groundskeeping, monitor port facilities, contractors, terminal operators, etc. So we are in effect 2.5 positions. This, by converting this to a full-time regular position, will be up to three full-time positions at the port.
Okay. Questions of staff? Okay. Thank you, sir. I don't see any. So I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 25-003. We do not have a sign-up sheet. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the assembly on this ordinance? Do we have anybody online? We do not have anybody online. Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing on ordinance 25-003. Assemblyperson Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to adopt ordinance 25-003.
Discussion by the assembly. Any objection by the assembly? Seeing and hearing none, the legislation passes. We have another audience participation. We do not have a sign-up sheet. So this is another time, but if you did testify the first time, we don't allow you to testify again. But is there anybody else in the audience that would like to address the assembly on any subject? Doesn't have to be something on the agenda. It can be, anything from when are we going to have snow to is anybody planting flowers, right? Yeah, mow the lawn. Okay, we don't have anybody online. Okay, I'm going to close audience participation. Madam Clerk.
For the consent agenda, AM 25002, award a contract number 2599C to Braun Northwest Incorporated in the amount of $505,648 to remount and refurbish 2 North Star ambulances.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
I move to approve the consent agenda as read into the record by the clerk.
Is there any objection by the assembly? Yes, go ahead. Assembly
Not an
President.
objection, but a question, and I should have looked at that sooner. How much do these things cost brand new? Ken?
Good evening, Mayor, Assembly, and staff. Ken Barkley, Director of Emergency Services. The approximate cost as it changes on style, but is approximately $500,000 for a new ambulance. What this does, I think this is our 5th, maybe even 6th year doing the refurbs, and we've done 2 each time. That gives us, the box comes off, we get a new chassis, engine, and we get it retitled as a brand new ambulance, both of them. And then the box is put back on, but it's also refurbished. There's modifications and updates done to the box as well. For the borough and the taxpayers, it's been a great deal, and the assembly supported that for the last 5, maybe 6 years.
So do you guys do that yourselves, or does it go out to somebody, or?
It goes out to Braun as
Oh,
a
okay.
company, Lower 48.
I see.
And it's, the shipping and everything is total in that cost.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Does that, you said that does not include the cab, just the chassis, the motor, running, or drivetrain?
Correct. That's all included. The box comes off and the same box goes on, but they refurb the entire inside and update it and make changes as we see fit.
He asked if the cab of the vehicle was included.
I'm sorry, through the mayor, Assembly Member Neer, yes, the cab is part of the new purchase.
So it's basically a brand new vehicle.
Brand new vehicle, titled brand new, registered brand new. Literally, they pull the box off and put everything brand new under. Box goes back on and gets refurbished interior.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Assemblyperson Fowler.
It's still a large amount, even though we're saving compared to getting a brand new. When this process goes through, does it just goes out through the bidding process, or you shop around? How does that come together when this number comes up? Is there multiple companies that do that? Can you just kind of explain the process that
Through the mayor.
and why it's still so expensive, I guess?
Oh, no, there are a few companies that do that. There is a bidding process, but we're sole sourced this one through Braun. And so far, they've met the criteria that we asked for and the timeline and the cost. They also include the shipping, and also we send 2 people out for pre-inspection, and that's also included in the cost. So far, it's the best deal, and it's saving us a lot of money.
Okay, I need to correct myself and correct what's going on here. I'm getting the eye from the clerk, because this is not the time. This is an information action item, and so if we wanted to have discussion, we should have pulled it from the consent agenda and been able to discuss it. So if you don't want me to get in trouble with the clerk, and if you haven't seen the whip she has in her office, so thank you.
So does that mean we can't ask any more questions?
No, right, that means that.
So Russ doesn't get to talk to us. Never mind.
So is there any objection to the AM? Hearing none, then the consent agenda has been approved. There is no unfinished business. We do not have any vetoes. We do have some introductions for public hearing, Madam Clerk.
Introduction for public hearing on January 21st, ordinance 24-101, ordinance 24-05 or 004 with accompanying resolution 25-4, ordinance 25-5, ordinance 25-6 with accompanying resolution 25-5, ordinance 25-7 with accompanying resolution 25-6, ordinance 25-8 with accompanying resolution 25-7, and ordinance 25-9. Is there another one? Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, I
right, 2
was
more.
not going to introduce the other 2. Sorry. Ordinance 25-11 and ordinance 25-12.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
I move to introduce the legislation as read into the record by the clerk and set the public hearing for January 21st, 2025.
Discussion by the Assembly. Any objection? Hearing none, then the legislation has been introduced. Deputy Mayor.
I move to confirm the mayor's recommendation as follows. The Agriculture Advisory Board's resignation of Melanie Glatt and at Amanda Salmon. Enhanced 9-1 Advisory Board. Elhia, Travis, Thomas Lanner, Earl Amdale. Labor Relation Board, Michael Bowles. Plating Board, Michael Liebing. Resignation of Dan Bush and Amanda Salmon.
Okay, is there any discussion on the vacancy report? Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, the vacancy report is approved. There is no new business, there's no referrals, there is no recommendations, and we are to Assembly comments. Mr. Attorney, parting comments? Okay, Assemblyperson McKee, parting comments?
Yeah, there is. I think when we have public discourse, whether it's in person or us up here or the folks out there, there's a certain amount of decorum that goes along with that. And I think when we use inflammatory language, that's A, not fair, and B, inappropriate, just for the record.
Deputy Mayor, parting comments?
What she said. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Thank you, Lord, for providing a cut bank there so I could dig gravel out and get me unstuck. Thank you for all your blessings that you bestow on our borough. Please help everyone to love one another, keep everyone safe. In Jesus' name, amen.
Voting comments, Assembly personnelers? No? Mr. Manager? Madam Clerk?
Just Happy New Year.
Okay. Assemblyperson Sumner, parting comments?
No comments.
Assemblyperson Gamble?
No comments.
Assemblyperson Fauna, parting comments?
Yeah, quickly, as Mayor brought up to attention to some of these people that spoke in regard to 24-101, I would like for you, encourage you to come and be part of next meeting so that your voices are heard, because I do think it's a pretty big decision, big change, and I'll welcome you guys. So thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. I want to talk just a little bit about the vacancy report. For those, one of the responsibilities of the mayor is to recommend to the assembly appointments to our boards and commissions. We have 53 boards and commissions in the borough. And so if you're thinking about getting involved or something, they're anywhere from animal control to Board of Equalization to Planning and Commission. And so there are, in the packet, several vacancies. There is some on some fire service areas, road service areas. And so we don't really bite, I don't think. Even I was just kidding about the clerk. And so I just encourage you, appreciate you all coming out, and safe travels home. And we will adjourn at 7:18.
You will now be disconnected.